welcome back. Let's talk about the GI Joe fallacy. We've been talking about cognitive biases and logical fallacies and a number of other videos. I hope you check them out. But the GI Joe fallacy is this misconception that simply knowing about cognitive biases prevents you from falling into their trap. Simple knowledge doesn't work. And I'll explain that with a kind of radical story here in a second, but then I'm going to dive in and I will give you 5 things that you can work on, as I do in all of these videos about cognitive bias, that can help you move beyond just this trap, this GI Joe fallacy of thinking that, well, I know about it, so now I don't have to worry about it. It's not going to impact me. So the story that I want to tell this is this. A number of years ago, I've done different kinds of studies over the years, qualitative research studies on lots of different topics, formal and informal. And I remember just informally, I remember asking this question one time. I was driving by a hospital and I saw a number of people who were outside on the side of the hospital smoking a cigarette. And this was years ago. And I just out of curiosity thought, well, that's fascinating. These are people who know a lot about health and about health care. They work in a healthcare institution and they're smoking cigarettes. And I thought it was pretty well known that smoking cigarettes is probably not that great for your health. And I was just curious, not really judging, but just curious. So I actually went over and I asked people there, and I said, can you tell me a little bit about your work? I'm just curious. And some people were not interested in talking to me, but oddly enough, there were 3 people from oncology. So these are people that worked with cancer patients. I don't know if lung cancer or not, and they were smoking cigarettes on their break, and it just highlighted for me this realization that knowing that something is good for you or not good for you health-wise doesn't necessarily automatically change your behavior. And maybe you are okay with having some health risks. Maybe these people say, yeah, I have the vice of smoking a cigarette a few times a day, but I also exercise a lot and I eat healthy, and maybe they have a list of other things that counters that, and that's fine. But my point was just the fact that simply knowing that one thing is better for you than not doesn't necessarily change that. And this is how the GI Joe fallacy works sometimes, though, is that it would be almost like thinking that knowing about how to be healthy, having the knowledge about what kind of exercises I should do, how I should eat, how I should manage stress, that will somehow change my health. But it doesn't, right? You actually have to engage in some of those things. Same thing is true for cognitive biases with this GI Joe fallacy. Just knowing about cognitive biases, it can help a little bit. It can increase your awareness, but it doesn't actually help you avoid them. So here are some ways to navigate that. The first one I would say is to acknowledge that cognitive biases are a part of how our brains are designed, and you will not escape them. That you are going to be susceptible to cognitive biases and logical fallacies. It's just going to be part of life. So acknowledging that that's what you're working with from the beginning, so that you acknowledge that you are indeed susceptible, as all people are, and that there are some strategies you can engage in to help you get through them and navigate them. So that's one that can be really helpful. A second one is use real-time reminders. So put some visual cues or reminders where when you're in areas where you're making decisions, or if you are like, maybe you're one of the people on this channel who's part of the John Collins Black There's Treasure Inside Treasure Hunt, or maybe you watch this channel because you want to apply these in your workplace. Well, maybe at your desk or at the place where you're doing your thinking and your planning and your clue solving, you put some kind of reminder. Could a little be a piece of art, a symbol, or something like that, to nudge you to engage in some behavior or action that helps mitigate one or more cognitive biases that you're prone to. So a reminder. I come from a faith background, and there used to be this idea of a prayer rock where you would put a rock on your pillow at night so that you'd remember to pray when you go to bed, and then you put the rock on the floor when you go to bed, and either you stump your foot on it in the morning or you are reminded to pray when you see the rock. That's what I'm talking about. Is you can use a symbol to remind you to engage in a behavior that's going to help you be a better problem solver, better decision maker. You get the idea. Third one is practice navigating cognitive biases in low stakes situations. So you want to test your bias awareness with little choices that are going on in your life about sort of when you're at the grocery store and you're making small choices and decisions that are maybe not as consequential, and you want to practice and begin to just increase your awareness of how you are engaging in cognitive biases all over the place, because we are doing it on a daily basis. I'm probably was doing it in the preparation for this video, and I'll probably finish this video and go fall into the trap of some cognitive bias. So increasing your awareness in the small situations. And then the next one is track your knowledge action gap. So keep a record of times when you knew better, but you still slipped. It's almost like creating what I have sometimes called, or other people have called, an unresume. The resume is of all your accomplishments, so you want to remember the things you did well. The unresume are the times when you slipped. So keeping a record, doing a kind of diary, almost like a little bit of a personal confessional of the times that you've fallen into the trap of a cognitive bias, and remind yourself of it by journaling about it, so that you remember that you are susceptible, you are vulnerable, none of us are perfect. And then the last one is actually what I'm doing here on this entire channel, which is to teach it, to teach about cognitive biases, and to teach other people and invite other people to learn how to engage in some of these strategies and practices that reduce their impact on you. So the more you teach it, not just teaching it like telling people about it, and that can be helpful because it makes you more aware, but teach people about some of the strategies, and maybe even playfully practice some of the strategies with other people in your family or with your friends. And you can do it in really simple ways and have conversations about cognitive biases over meals. They actually make for great storytelling oftentimes. If you bring up a cognitive bias, usually people have a lot of stories and examples of how they've seen it in others or themselves, and then you can talk about, well, here's how I try to avoid it, and here's where I've succeeded and failed. That kind of feedback loop and thinking about it can help you. So there you go. There are 5 ways to help avoid the GI Joe fallacy of thinking that just because you know about cognitive bias, you're not going to fall into it. I hope you find this useful. I look forward to your comments.